Ukraine has entered Russian territory, taking the war to Putin's doorsteps. I am talking about the Kursk offensive, a shock lightning attack which caught the Russians by surprise. On the 6th of August, Ukrainian tanks rolled into the bordering Russian region of Kursk, taking over almost 1,000 square kilometers of Russian territory with ease. Russia was so surprised by the attack that it had no defensive strategy in play for the first few days. Its response, according to one expert, has been shambolic, even as Ukrainian troops advanced facing little resistance. And Vladimir Putin is furious. So what is happening? Is Ukraine's gamble paying off, or has it made a big mistake? Deadly wars are no stranger to the Russian region of Kursk. In 1943, the Battle of Kursk, dubbed the final gasp of Nazi aggression, was one of the most consequential battles in the Eastern Front when Nazi Germany pushed further into Soviet territory. It was the largest tank battle in history, with 6,000 tanks and 2 million troops. With over 1 million casualties, it was considered one of the costliest battles in the Second World War. Ultimately, Hitler's forces were defeated by the Soviets, and this played a deciding role in the war. 80 years on, Kursk finds itself turned into a battlefield again, this time between Ukraine and Russia. Ukraine's incursion into the region has surprised almost everyone, including Russia. No one saw it coming except locals at the ground level who had been sending warnings about a Ukrainian buildup. But they were not heard, and ultimately, Ukrainian troops successfully rolled in and fanned out across a vast area of Russian land. Ukraine has also blown up 2 bridges in the region. Hundreds of thousands of people have been evacuated across all border regions, including Belgorod, and more will follow in the days to come. Ukraine has even captured the city of Sudzha. This is where a lot is at stake, including a crucial pipeline. You see, this region hosts a pipeline that supplies Russian gas to European countries through Ukraine. That's right, Hungary, Austria, and Slovakia are still buying Russian gas, and it is through this pipeline. What's more, its sole pumping station is in Sudzha, which is now in Ukrainian control. So far, Ukraine has kept its hands off this pipeline because it is bound by a contract. You see, Kiev has allowed the continued flow of gas through this Soviet-era pipeline under a $2 billion contract between the state-owned Naftogaz and Russia's Gazprom. That's $2 billion annually. But the risk of damage and disruption as the fighting intensifies cannot be ruled out. Moreover, the Kursk nuclear power plant, which has not been taken over yet, is also at risk of becoming a fighting zone in the days to come. This was not just a major intel failure, but Russian troops were so caught off guard that they completely failed to defend against the attack. You see, Ukraine took advantage of an obvious weakness. This part of the border was lightly guarded and therefore an easy target at a time when Russian forces are concentrated in the Donetsk region, where the main front lines of the war remain. Reports say that the attack comprised battle-hardened Ukrainian troops who had an easy walkover against poorly armed Russian conscripts. Russia had to initially rely on jets and helicopter gunships to counter the attack. So was this a winning move for Ukraine, or was it a big mistake? Let's look at the first question. Was it a winning move? Here's everything Kiev achieved with this offensive. Firstly, let's not forget that such a sophisticated attack must be months in the making, and despite this, Ukraine was able to achieve the element of surprise. Operational security of this level has impressed allies, including the US. Secondly, Ukraine gets a possible bargaining chip. It has said that it is not interested in taking Russian territory. Zelensky has himself called this takeover as part of an exchange fund. Depending on the magnitude of its success, the reasoning for this attack could be to take over Russian territory so as to force a bargain on the negotiating table. In other words, handing over Russian territory held by Ukrainian troops in return for Ukrainian territory held by Russian troops. That's the best case scenario, that is, if Ukraine is able to hold on to the seized territory long enough. Thirdly, the short-term gain from Ukraine's Kursk offensive was to simply alleviate the stress on its forces in Donbass by forcing Russia to pull out its troops from there. And this is already happening. Russia has diverted thousands of troops inside Ukraine towards Kursk. In fact, Putin has had to walk back on a promise he made not to send conscripts to the front lines. And fourthly, Ukraine may be able to use jammers deep into Russian territory, which will affect Russia's air superiority. And this is the fifth achievement. The move has boosted the morale of Ukraine's forces as well as the people, which comes at a time when hope had been withering away. And finally, Ukraine seizing Russian territory with relative ease has embarrassed Putin, making a spectacle of how shambolic Russia's initial reaction was to the attack. This has been satisfying for Ukraine's leaders, but it comes with a risk. That brings us to the question, is Ukraine making a mistake? Now, firstly, Ukraine has invited Putin's wrath, which may lead to more intense fighting in Donbass as well as in Kursk. He has said that Ukraine will receive a worthy response. Russia essentially reacted with air raids and a missile attack in the capital city of Kiev, and more such attacks are expected in the future. Second, Ukraine transferred a chunk of machines and men from the front lines of the war to fight in Kursk, and that has left experts concerned. It's even more concerning considering the third point. You see, Ukraine's losses are greater than Russia's in the battle. It is losing far more tanks and armored vehicles. In the first 9 days of the invasion itself, the Ukrainian lost 4 tanks and 41 infantry vehicles. These included the British-made Challenger 2 tank and several American-supplied Striker fighting vehicles. It is losing infantry vehicles at almost double the normal rate. Ukraine has also lost more men than Russia. Given that these were battle-hardened brigades that are now out in the open, this is a concerning loss ratio. Third, the nuclear threat is back on the table, although Ukraine cannot really be blamed for that. Russia has claimed that Ukraine is planning to take the Kursk nuclear plant and also plans to use a dirty bomb. This would be a major provocation. Ukraine has termed this as insane Russian propaganda, but this is a dangerous discourse. For Russia, this may be a hint that it may use its own nukes to stop Ukraine. With Russia angry and on the back foot, this only elevates the risk of a nuclear bomb going off in this war. According to Professor John Mearsheimer, the Kursk offensive is a foolish move. In fact, here's what he says, and I quote, "It is no wonder, given what a foolish idea the Kursk incursion is, that the Russians were caught by surprise." Now let me read the full quote. "Ukraine's invasion of Kursk was a major strategic blunder, which will accelerate its defeat. The key determinant of success in the war of attrition is the casualty exchange ratio, not capturing territory, which Western commentators obsess over. So while Ukraine has made a hopeful advance, Russia still has its cards to play, and that may or may not flip the mood in the days to come. Zelensky has made a bold gamble, no doubt, but the victor is defined by the ending of the battle, not the beginning. Throughout history, we have seen successful attacks turn into crushing defeats. Will this be one of them, or will it beat the naysayers? Time will tell."